welcome back. I'm Gabby.
And I'm Ariana.
And this is She's Fruitful. We're a faith-based podcast to talk about all things Jesus, insights, and experiences that we have had.
And today we're going to be talking about healing. How do you know you need to be healed from something? How do we begin the healing process? And how do we avoid having a hardened heart? If you enjoy watching our podcast, please be sure to like and subscribe. We could not be here without each and every one of you guys.
And we're a viewer-supported podcast, so if you want to donate, there's going to be a link in the description as well as a QR code that's going to pop on the screen. Any donation, anything you guys want to give is truly, truly appreciated, and we love every single one of you. We really, really do. So, how are you?
I am doing good. Just going through the motions, I think. I feel like God's like helping me enter like a new season. I feel like I flipped a page in my trust with him, and then also understanding like my belief is growing in like who God is. Not that I never believed in God, but like over time when you can like you start looking for God's hand in your life, like you start to see it. And when you start looking for God's hand in your life like every day with the little things, like you really can see him so much more, and it just I feel like fills your heart with so much gratitude, because you're like, wow, like this God that created everything genuinely has like a concern for my life, and he's really there in the details. And like learning to trust that is just like so good, especially when you have been like hurt. We're talking about pain and like being hurt today, so like in healing, like with that in mind, it makes everything else kind of seem almost so small, and kind of helps you see like the bigger picture,
What kind of chapter do you think you're going into?
I think it's just, that season of trusting God with everything, like full surrender. I think there was always points in my life that I didn't want to give to God, little areas of my life that I didn't want to give to him. And now it's like I have gotten to the point where I understand who God is so much that like I don't want anything to do with what I want. Mm-hmm. And like it's always little by little that he's like breaking it down. It's almost like you have that, like how they did art back in the old days, how they gave you like a big piece of stone and you would just chip away until you have this like beautiful creation, and I feel like God's just chipping more and more away at me, and like helping me just to see like who he is, and that he has a plan, and that I can trust him, and that he is faithful, and that we always see it, but sometimes like just like the Israelites wanted to go back to slavery, sometimes we forget who God is, and it's so how quick we forget who God is. So these like little constant like reminders, and choosing to see those things and choosing to have faith, it's just been very good. It's been very nice.
I love that. It is so beautiful, and you're so anointed, and you like, this isn't just for cameras, guys. Like, Ari's really like a God-fearing woman. She really is. And like what you preach on here is what you like, who you truly are. And so I'm really excited to see what's gonna come for you in your future, because I know it's gonna be very, very beautiful.
Gabby, you can't start us out like that. You're gonna make me cry. I love you so much. And I mean, I of course see the same thing in you, and that's why I love our relationship, because I genuinely feel like we can sharpen each other. I feel like that's the kind of like thing that we have like cultivated now, is like the people we have in our lives like are able to push us to be towards God, and you play like a tremendous role in that, and you're a wonderful example in that. So
you're so cute. No, you've definitely sharpened me too before, so I've definitely haven't I feel like in this past, I want to say a few months, have been pretty hard, just like trying to graduate, and like just so much going on, and it was crazy. I was praying to God like a few months ago, like, God, expose the things in my heart, and it's so humbling when he actually does. And so, but it's all about like looking within and trying to grow, and just being humble before God, and being like, I am a sinner, and I fall short. I sometimes get a little angry, sometimes I get a little emotional, especially when it's like around that time of the month.
Yeah.
And so like I'm definitely so grateful to have you by me, and to always just call me out, call me for higher, and I always trust your advice and your insights, because it's always Christ-centered, and it's always good. So I love you.
Love you too. No, it's so true, and same. Like, I feel like those times, like, that shows just so much humility in your heart. How you said like you have to have humility to go to God and ask him to search your heart, or ask him to remove anything, or show you anything, reveal it to you. He absolutely will every time, but that takes so much humility. And I think pride is what gets in the way of a lot of us, because pride tells you that you don't need to pray to God, or like I can do it on my own. And like I feel like so many of us get stuck there, like, oh, I can handle this and I could do this. And so we don't even think that we need God's help or his advice or his guidance. And then like we end up making a mess of things. But
Yeah.
how has your week been though?
It's been good. So this week we started like a new set of classes. It's like the second half of the summer semester. And so I'm taking 6 classes total, guys, for 2 weeks. After 2 weeks, the 2 classes will be finished, and I'll be stuck with 4, which isn't as bad. Well, it's the first week, so
yeah, girl. Like, yeah, and we also have Life Surge this weekend, which is really exciting. So a few cool people are going to be there, like Tim Tebow, Priscilla Shire, Ed Millett,
yes.
and I think Bethel Music.
Yeah.
And just many other people.
Yeah, you're like,
just more of them.
No, I'm so excited for Ed Millett. I've been listening to his podcast for about like 2 to 3 years now. Wow. And he has pulled me out of some like really hard moments. Like, you know when you hear something and you're just like, wow, that is so true. And then you just kind of a whole like mind shift. He has been that person for me, so hopefully I get to meet him and tell him that. That'd be so cool. Yeah,
it's like sometimes it's crazy that we can look back at those like defining moments that like have just like changed the direction of our lives. And I feel like, you know, speaking of like hurt and healing, I feel like those are some of the things that, you know, also defined us. Sometimes it's such those intense pains that have been caused by someone or something that just like redefine you, and you can pinpoint it back to like exactly the person, exactly the time. And what I feel like happens is like sometimes we don't want to admit that pain. Sometimes we want to say like, oh no, I don't hold on to anything, like I don't have any grudges or I don't have anything, whether it's like a parent, a family member, a friend, a neighbor, a stranger, you know, like these things that happen to us. Pain always does hurt, and pain doesn't just go away. You know, you have to deal with it. So when we decide to just like not deal with it, it's putting that Band-Aid on a bullet hole, and it's just gonna keep bleeding out, and like it's almost like it just will spread through the rest of your body, you know, that pain.
Yeah, and your hearts become hardened. I think when you don't deal with trauma and stuff, like you become like such a hardened person, and you avoid things. You don't really grow. You just kind of are, you know, stagnant, and you don't grow spiritually, you don't grow emotionally, you don't grow cognitively. I don't know. Like, you just don't grow. You kind of just get stuck there.
Yeah. And it can even, like, depending on the level of it, even take away even more from you. Like, it can, you know, grow into something physical. Yeah. And then you're headed to the doctor about I got pain here, and here, and they're writing a prescription to help you deal with the pain, but not get to the root of the pain and the source of the pain.
That's a whole other topic about, like, medicine and everything where... Well, that's not really what you're talking about, but just made me think about, like, medicine where people, like, well, but no, it's true.
It is, though, because people are addicted to drugs for years because of this pain that they have, whether it's, you know, actually physical, something that happened to him, or just, like, pain, and then we get anxiety, and then we wonder why we have anxiety, so we're going to the doctor for a prescription rather than, you know, going to the Lord, which it's hard when we don't know, and, like, we hear of God all the time, but without having a personal relationship with him, you know, kind of like what we said last week, like, if you don't know and believe who God is, the Bible, the word, or just words on a page, you know, like they're not able to impact us. And then, so like, I understand when people go to other things, and that's why I think it's our job to shine that light and to be that light for people, because most people don't know. And, you know, sometimes we're going to be the only Bible that someone ever reads. So we have to take that responsibility and understand that, like, our choices have impact. Like, our choices do matter. You could be that one person that brings that person who's been in pain for years and finally go to God and understand. You know, I think of the story of the blind man. He was blind from childhood. His mom knew he was blind. His family knew he was blind. Everybody in the city knew he was blind. And then Jesus just heals him. And then the people in the Sanhedrin and the Pharisees, they're wondering, like, who healed you? Who healed you? It's a Sabbath. It's a Sabbath. And he's saying, like, I don't know. And they start asking all of these questions about Jesus. He's like, I don't know who he is. All I know is that I was once blind and now I can see. So it's just so good. Like, that's the kind of God we have.
I love that so much. And I think that goes into the verse that I want to start off with this episode. It is Mark chapter 11, verse 24. And it says, "Therefore I tell you, whatever you ask for in prayer, believe that you have received it, and it will be yours. And you have to believe what you're praying for. If you want to have strength in and having willpower in overcoming any habits and anything that you are battling, you have to believe that God has already given you that, because he has. It says it in the Bible, right? You have to believe that he is going to heal you from any trauma that you're going through. But the problem is that we don't believe until we see it. So until we see it, then we're like, okay, then we're healed. But the thing is like with healing, sometimes it's like a roller coaster. Sometimes you're feeling good, and sometimes you're feeling good, like really sad.
Yeah, and that's just like trusting in God with the outcome of something, because sometimes when that pain is in our heart, it hardens us like concrete, and like it grows that bitter root in us, and it stops us from loving, and it makes us fearful. We're scared to love, and we're scared to be loved. So there was a pastor, and he was saying, like, when someone comes and takes your fruit, you don't have to go and try to take it back. Like, if you're connected to the source, in this case, if you aren't removed from the root, you're going to produce that fruit again. Like, you don't have to build a wall up around your fruit so that no one takes it. Mm-hmm. And that's why it takes faith. Like, that kind of, to forgive someone who hasn't asked for your forgiveness, like, that is faith. Mm-hmm. That's saying, God, I believe who you are, and I understand that battle is not with flesh and blood, and what you say will always come to be, and you have the plan that's better for me. Mm-hmm. And sometimes, I know in my case, if I didn't go through the pain, if I didn't get hurt the way I got hurt, I would have stayed right there. Because God knows I'm a little stubborn. God knows that I love very hard, but sometimes I love the wrong things. And so he allows it to cause so much pain so you can actually let go and move on from it. And I think that is where we get a lot of tension, though, because what isn't for you normally causes pain. What God didn't bring to you or give to you that you went out and got for yourself, went out of his will to obtain, it normally leads to pain, and that's like why we need the pain, so we can let go and see that God is greater. And it's funny that it's always in like very unconventional ways. I think about Naaman. He was like second in command, and he had leprosy, and he was heard that there was a prophet in town, and he went to see the prophet, and the prophet was like, go dip yourself in the Jordan River 7 times and you will be healed from leprosy. He actually got mad and walked away because he's like, why the Jordan River? It's gross, it's dirty. Mm-hmm. Like, there's so many other rivers that I could dip myself in, and like I'm too above it. I'm too above dipping myself in that kind of water. And the servant actually says to him, in 2 Kings 5:13, it says, Naaman's servants went to him and said, my father, if the prophet had told you to do some great thing, would you not have done it? How much more then when he tells you, wash and be cleansed? So I think sometimes we also in our heads make it a lot bigger than it is, like forgiveness a lot bigger than it is. Don't get me wrong, I know some things have happened in this world that are vile and terrible and heartbreaking, and like the worst things sometimes that we can't even imagine, that how evil and how hardened people's hearts can be to do these things. But when you keep your eyes fixed on the big picture, we just talked about Joseph in prison, through everything, through the betrayal, through the years, through this entire trial, he gets to the end of it, and he's able to feed all the people, save so many people from famine, from being hungry. And same with this, like, when we see God as the big God that he is, forgiving that terrible thing is easier because you can put it into perspective. Perspective is everything. You can see that, look behind the truth of what that person is saying. Look behind the truth at why that person did what they did. Because most of the time, we hear it all the time, but hurt people hurt people. Mm-hmm. And there is pain that caused that person to be like that, to be abusive, to be mean, to be uncaring, to be unkind and unloving. That person has just been hurt. And because they didn't deal with the hurt, but they put the Band-Aid on it, now it's growing into something that it never should have been in the first place. And unfortunately, our sin doesn't only affect us, it affects everybody around us.
And something about that story with the man with leprosy, something that just came to my head was that, yes, he needed healing from leprosy, but he also needed healing with his mindset, with who he was. Someone like, you can with pride, like, that is where you get true healing. And you don't know, how do I say it? Like, you just need Jesus, because you can be going through the worst times of your life. And obviously, I don't want to downplay what anybody is going through, what anybody has, but as long as you have Jesus, I think of the story of Job. Like, he, lost everything, lost his health, lost his family, lost his money, lost everything. And he kept his faith, and he had his eyes on God. And that's how we have to be. And yes, we can pray for healing. We can pray for all these things. But the true healing begins within your heart and within your mind.
Yeah, and that not wanting to forgive someone is making it about you. I think, and it's kind of, it can feel harsh when we say that because a lot of bad things have happened, but like God normally is leading us somewhere, and it's God's story. We are characters in God's story, not the other way around. Like, we like to have our life and then add God to it, but really it's God's world and we're living in it. And like the best way to live in God's world the right way is living right by God. And like to hear, and he says, forgive as Christ has forgiven you, and I have forgiven you. And that's kind of like, when someone isn't asking for forgiveness, think of Jesus giving us forgiveness as them asking. Like, that makes the atonement. Jesus takes that person's place that has the hardened part, and like instead now Jesus is giving that to you. So you're able to let go, because no one can make you bitter. No one can make you hold on to anger. Nobody can make you hold on to unforgiveness. That is a choice.
Yeah.
That is something that we do. And I want to read Ephesians 4:30 through 32. And it says, "And do not grieve the Holy Spirit of God, with whom you were sealed for the day of redemption. Get rid of all bitterness, rage, and anger, brawling and slander, along with every form of malice. Be kind and compassionate to one another, forgiving each other just as Christ forgave you." So we're supposed to be tender-hearted, not hard-hearted. And like these things that happen are all playing a part. I think I've already said that like a million times, but they're truly all playing a part in the recipe that it takes to make you who you are. And like giving that person that forgiveness, and your forgiveness without it being earned, is gonna show so much in that person's life, and then everybody else's life who's watching how you navigate. Because again, we are representatives of Christ. Like, that is exactly what he calls us to. Not to malice, not to holding on to bitterness, not to hold on to anger, but to let it go, because he knows that if you let these seeds water and you let these seeds grow, like, you're going to see it in the fruit of your life. And it's not going to be fun. You're going to end up causing more pain, more hurt, than just forgiving this first hurt that happened to you.
Yeah, it causes so much division. And we need to be very, very careful, because life and death is in the power of the tongue. I cannot stress that enough. So what you talk about, what you think about, it's gonna lead the direction of your life. So we have to be very, very careful with how we think about how to go about things, and how we handle situations, and how we treat others.
So I think that's, again, perfect segue to our question, which is like, how do you know if you need to be healed from something? How do we know we have a baggage that we're just kind of avoiding or not even acknowledging?
I can talk about like personal experience. So I think it's the way you handle situations where you can really tell how you can really tell if you really need to spend some time spend some time healing. For example, I would, whenever my parents would have arguments and stuff and would try to put me and my sister in the middle of it, I would literally like go away. Like, I would lock myself in the room and not talk about it, and I didn't want to deal with it. Like, I just shut myself out of like any kind of problem. And so I think that was a major flag, I would say, that would tell me like, hey, you need to confront these things. If you're running away from your problems, they're gonna blow up in your in your face. And it's only you can only run for so long, right? Because you bury these things, and your heart becomes a little more hardened, because you're burying all this trauma in your heart and you're not talking about it. And although I do find myself to be a vulnerable person, but I don't don't deal with it in the moment. I like let it bury within, and then later on I realized that I have all this trauma built up, because trauma isn't something traumatic that you just saw. It's not only just something that you saw that was really traumatic. It's things that you go through in life that truly change you and have affected you, right? So I think that is a major thing, is if you're running away from your problems and you're not facing it.
I think that it's going to, exactly how you said that, it's going to show up in how you handle situations. And I think that is definitely so spot on, because, I've noticed that when I didn't deal with like hurts that I've had, even like with my relationships, whether that's a friendship or a boyfriend or in family or something like that, I am like closed off. And then I'm bringing that into like my next relationships or my other friendships and how I like treat other people. So it's just like when anything that isn't fruitful, like we have to look at the fruit. That's why we have to be aware and have discernment and wisdom to see, like, I'm not handling this relationship right. Like, I'm not handling these situations right. And that takes being honest with yourself, because when little things get you angry or little things make you want to run away, and like that is a huge indicator that there's something here that needs to be addressed. Mm-hmm. And if you don't address it, it's gonna hurt you later on, because next thing you know, time flies. Like, life is so quick, like it goes by so fast. And then you're gonna get to this age, and then you're gonna be like, wow, I could have done so much more, but instead I let my pain, I let my hurt, I let my problems like stunt me and stunt my growth. And now I couldn't get to the point where God was taking me, because I have this suitcase that I'm carrying around with me full of all this stuff,
Yeah, you really, like, anybody that is listening, please take some time to talk to somebody, maybe even a professional, that can help you unpack all that baggage that you have been carrying around for years. And if you're like me, where you kind of have ran away from feeling and from hiding things and not really telling people about how you truly feel, I promise you, it is such a weight lifted off your shoulders when you're able to just talk about it and just let it out in the open. And there's so much freedom in confession, and it's kind of like shining light onto this darkness that you have been sitting in for so long. So how do you start the healing process?
I think spending time with God and relinquishing it. I don't think I would have ever began to heal, or again even know that I needed healing, if I didn't go to God and first ask for him to reveal these things to me. Like, if I didn't ask God to show me where I was holding on to bitterness, where I was holding on to anger, and because sometimes we are very blind to it, and like we don't see the areas in our life where we're not really treating a person very loving, or that we have this block up, or that we're not seeing someone how they should be seen. And when we go to God and we ask these things, and then when that process starts, like let's say for instance, like you lose someone, you lose a relationship that meant so much to you, you guys had an argument or something, a disagreement where you guys had to part ways. And so we talk about it a lot, but like the devil, how he comes after our mind. And when you hear those thoughts, like we talk about rebuking it. But also, I think it's very important to speak the truth. Like, I have been practicing that lately, where if I have this negative thought in me and it's in me so much, normally we call a friend, we go talk to someone, and we just like kind of air it all out. But instead of like airing it all out, I feel like having composure and speaking the truth. Because if you really believe something, again, it's going to show in your actions. So now it's like, God, I pray blessings over them. I pray that you shine a light into any darkness, and that you bring people into their lives. And God, forgive me if I'm not seeing anything, and reveal it to me if I'm not seeing something that I should be seeing. But God, we trust you, and that we know you're in control, and we know that your purpose is greater, and that you have far more for us. Everything is better by far when you're in control. And if you're allowing this, I want to learn as much as I can from it. So don't deliver me from it until I learn everything that I need to. Mm-hmm. And God, come into my heart and bring healing to me. Help me know. And we don't receive because we do not ask. So many of us just need to ask God. Just say, God, like, I really do invite you into my heart and invite you into my life. And I need healing, because I'm not healing from this. I've said I'm not dealing with this. Nope, I'm fine. No, you're not. Because if you haven't addressed it, then you aren't able to heal from it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think that forgiveness is kind of the source of healing. Like, you really have to forgive others, but also most importantly, forgive yourself for things that you have. Maybe you look back at and you wish you didn't handle a situation a certain way, and that really changed the trajectory of your life. Or maybe, something traumatic has happened and you just wish that it just didn't happen. Forgiving yourself in just the moments of allowing things that you wish you didn't allow. And I think it's just so important. Jesus did forgive us, and we have to look towards Jesus. And I've said this before, but every time that I have trouble forgiving somebody, I look at Jesus when he was on the cross and being spat at and literally being whipped and cursed and all these things. And he prayed and said, Father, forgive them, for they do not know what they do. And it's so true, and it's so inspiring to see Jesus to just react that way, because I know if it were me, I would be trying to get off of that cross. I would be trying to fight everybody and just, So it's kind of just humbling yourself, even if that person didn't apologize. Kind of like you said, it's such a good a good practice is to think about it in a way that, so Jesus dying on the cross takes place of the person that hasn't apologized. And I think that is so beautiful, because we truly have to see the bigger picture. We live in obviously a physical world, but everything is so spiritual. And we fight spiritual battles every single day, and some of us don't even know it. The anger, the sadness, the bitterness, the resentment, you have to fight it every day. Lay down your cross. Or, sorry, not lay down.
Pick it up.
Pick up your cross and follow Jesus. Think about what good is going to come out of you just being resentful, being mean, being rude, being hardened to other people. What is that going to do for you? What is that going to do for the people around you? It's not going to do you any good. Let me tell you that right now. And so you have to get yourself out of that, because listen, guys, you guys are not victims. I'm going to call you guys out right now and speak so much life into you, because we cannot be we cannot have that victim mentality where oh, this happened to me, so I get to feel this way. No, we don't get to feel anyway. We get to feel the joy and the love and the forgiveness and everything that Jesus did for us. And we have to have our minds, we're set apart, so we have to act like it. We cannot be victims. We're victors in Jesus Christ.
Yeah. I think a lot of people get caught up in thinking people owe us. Honestly, it's hard sometimes, because you want to see more and feel more from people, but at the end of the day, that's why God is first, and we're not entitled to anything. Jesus actually says that we're deserving of death, and there is pain that's going to happen in this world, and there is things that are going to come against us, but when you hold on to it, it's not going to help anybody, just like what you were saying. Mm-hmm. And honestly, when God decides to bless you with the better thing, something that's not going to hurt you, you'll end up hurting it. Yeah. Because you already had so much resentment and hate in your heart, and you didn't move through it, or anger, or bitterness, whatever it is. You didn't work through it. You held on to it. And sometimes it's something that we held on for so long for so long that the very thought of losing it stumps us more than the pain of keeping it in our lives.
Yeah. Being a victim keeps you in the past, keeps you in the trauma. It keeps you reliving that trauma all over and over and over again. And there has to be a point in time, guys, where you guys have to pull yourselves out of it and call out to the name of God. Believe that he's already given you the strength to overcome this battle.
Yeah, and I think it's very important to acknowledge, get out of the situation. If you are currently, and if this isn't a past pain that's from 10 years ago, 1 year ago, however long ago, and this is something that you're currently living in, or it's something that's repeated over and over again, this pain that you keep having to go through, sometimes we do have to remove ourselves. Kind of what I said in the beginning, these pains, because you would hold on. If you didn't have all this pain coming at you, which is a sign from God, the tension, the struggle, the fruit of that, it's not joy, it's not peace, it's not goodness, it's pain, and it's hurt, and it's sadness, and it's these feelings of inadequacy and anything else that comes from that. So sometimes you have to remove yourself. And forgiveness, we should really talk about what forgiveness is not, because forgiveness is not justifying a person's behavior. Forgiveness is not denying it. Forgiveness is not tolerating it and saying that it's okay because you are comfortable where you're at and you don't want to lose it. That shows a big part of where we lack trust in God, and it shows a major kink in our armor. And when we have holes in our armor, that's exactly where that's exactly where the devil is going to come and attack you. He attacks you where you're weak. If you are holding on to bitterness, if you are holding on for unforgiveness, that is a foothold, and it opens the door wide open. It leaves the door of your house wide open for the enemy to come and to kill and to steal and to destroy. He wants to take from you. And that's exactly what that does, because he doesn't want you to have forgiveness, because when you forgive, it frees you. He doesn't want that. He wants you to hold on to the bitterness, and he's going to speak those lies into your ear. That's why when they're coming into your ear, how this person did that, or you're just replaying the event over and over again, and you're seeing how this person responded, and you just cannot believe what's going on right now. Keep it inside. Do not speak that with your mouth. Instead, hear all those thoughts and speak blessing. Speak blessing, speak life. What is it? Pray for those who persecute you. Pray for those who harm you. When you have all these thoughts and inside and you want to just tell somebody, I just need to tell somebody what they did. I just need to testify. Yeah, but instead of you're like, God, seriously, God, bless them, help them, sharpen them, wake them up, help them to see where they lack, remove any pride. Love them, help them to feel your love, because that is not from you. Hurting people is not from God. That is from the enemy. It causes division. Where the enemy comes, he causes us to divide, because he knows that 3 strands are strong and it cannot be broken. But when we are isolated, when we are left or spread out or dispersed, there is a division that takes place, and that it's dividing us from fellowship. It's dividing us from who we're supposed to be. And it's ultimately going to cause pain and hardship and suffering in our lives.
No, it's so true. And I love how you brought up what forgiveness is not. And yeah, it's not justifying what others are doing. It's not being okay with being a doormat, basically, right? And being just comfortable in your situation. That is not forgiveness, because again, we're not called to live a life where we're not warriors. We're warriors. So if we see something that doesn't align with the Word of God, we have to make sure we go back to the alignment of the Word of God. So I've definitely had my fair share of trauma, and I've mentioned this in the past. It's just so that you guys know, and kind of, if you guys are new to this channel, my mom had stage 4 cancer. She survived it, but it was really, really tough seeing her go through that. A year after, my brother had died in a car accident, and the person that he was with, that was in the car with him, ended up suing us later. And that was really hard to watch and just go through as a kid. And then I think in 9th grade, so that was 3 years after my brother's car accident, my grandfather had committed suicide in my backyard. And that was really, really hard. And I know that this is kind of really personal, but if it's going to free somebody, I do want to talk about it. And I also had a bunch of family issues going on, with my parents, marriage and stuff. And my brain in the 9th grade specifically, I can say that was probably one of my worst years of my life, because my brain had developed a defense mechanism, and I didn't know it at the time. And it's derealization. And I know it's a lot more common than what I thought it was, but at the time I thought I was genuinely going crazy. I thought I was going crazy. I had 1 to 3 panic attacks a day for a whole year, because I thought that so basically derealization makes you feel like you're not real. This isn't real. You're watching a movie, that everything is so surreal. You are watching from you're just watching a movie,
the
life.
outside in.
Yeah, it's the craziest thing ever. And I didn't know what was wrong with me. So that year I started doing a lot of research because I would talk to my parents about it, and my dad's a really like tough man. He's a military man, and so he believed that there's no kind of things like of mental illness. Like he thought that I was just making it up. It doesn't exist, blah blah. But my mom was always there for me, and she'd always like talk to me, but she didn't know what was wrong with me, and I didn't want to go to the psychologist or anything. And so the more research I did, I realized that it was derealization. It was a defense mechanism that your brain does to protect you from any trauma, to protect you from anything that's going to be harmful to you. And I didn't know that, and it felt like such a relief. But what was a relief to me the most was that I saw other people go through it. There was YouTube videos of other people talking about their experience, and I cannot express this enough, guys. Find you a community that understands you, that knows what you're going through. My mom has a group of girlfriends that, like, their sons have passed away in car accidents, and you can talk about it, like, with other people, but they just won't understand how painful it is of a loss of a son. But talking to somebody that truly understands your pain, it is so freeing. And when I saw people go through the same thing that I was going through on YouTube, I was like, I'm not alone. Like, I feel so understood and so heard. And so even if you feel like you don't have anybody, though, I want to talk a little bit about Hagar. So Hagar was Sarah's slave, and you know the story of Abraham and Sarah. They couldn't have a child at the time, and so Sarah told Abraham to sleep with Hagar, and Hagar had no say in this. She was a slave. She couldn't speak up. She couldn't do anything. She just had to obey, and again, she had no say, and so she ended up sleeping with Abraham, got pregnant with Abraham's son. In Genesis chapter 16, after Hagar has ran away to the wilderness, it says in verse 7, it says, the angel of the Lord found Hagar near a spring in the desert. It was a spring that is beside the road to Shur. And he said, Hagar, slave of Sarai, where have you come from, and where are you going? I'm running away from my mistress Sarai, she answered. Then the angel of the Lord told her, go back to your mistress and submit to her. The angel added, I will increase your descendants so much that they will be too numerous to count. The angel of the Lord also said to her, you are now pregnant, and you will give birth to a son. You shall name him Ishmael, for the Lord has heard of your misery. He will be a wild donkey of a man. His hand will be against everyone, and everyone's hand against him, and he will live in hostility towards all his brothers. Verse 13, it says, she gave this name to the Lord who spoke to her. You are the God who sees me. For she said, I have now seen the one who sees me. Guys, she called him El Roi. She was the first person in the Bible to name God. And this means the God of seeing. She said, you are the God who sees me. So even if you don't feel seen, even if you don't feel understood, understand that God is all-knowing, he's all-present, and he's omnipotent, and he is with you at all times, and he just wants you to let him into your heart to start the healing process. And he knows you fully, he sees you fully, he understands you, and that is what we all look for, especially in the healing process. When I realized that other people were going through it, and like I felt like seen and understood, that was the moment that I was starting to heal from all the trauma that I've gone through.
Yeah, and I think that a lot of people can relate to that, because normally when we go through things like death or like disease or pain or whatever things coming against us that we don't understand, it is easier sometimes to like remove ourselves from that reality. Mm-hmm. And you know, I think I kind of told myself a lie for a long time when it came to like my dad passing away. And you know, I was younger, so I didn't really understand it. And I think I had this, like, I ended up throughout the years just making, like, jokes to kind of cover up, like, a defense mechanism. Like, I was like, oh, yeah, you know, like, Father's Day would come around. Well, I don't really have a dad. Ha, ha, ha. It's, like, and that's, like, all I knew to do, because I didn't really want to feel it. I didn't realize that it's such, like, a massive hole in like my life. And it wasn't until really we were doing this podcast talking a lot about a man of God, talking a lot about like the role of men and who men are, that I realized like I had a big, massive part of my life that was kind of like taken away from me, that I didn't have someone to be there to protect me, to guard me, to help me make good decisions, and to, you know, be there when I'm crying, be there when someone breaks my heart. Like I didn't have that there. And it wasn't until like God recently, it was just this past Father's Day that I kind of realized that I hadn't healed from this. And I don't think I'll ever fully heal from it, because it's obviously something that I'm going to have to relive. But I think I entered a new level of it. Rather than just like dismissing it and joking about it and ignoring it, I was able to sit here and understand it, because I was thinking about it, and I heard the verse, like, honor your father and mother, for it would go well for you in the land, like you will live a long life in the land. And I've always applied that towards my mom, like always. That's what restored our relationship years ago, is me applying that verse. And for some reason it popped into my head, and all I could think of is like, wow, like I'm not honoring my father in death. Like we should still honor them in death. And that kind of like helped my heart feel so much like at peace, because I could start actually thinking about him. And when I started thinking about him, like he wasn't really there, and there was a lot of trouble and a lot of hardship that was caused, you know. But then I think back about his life, and I was able to have conversations with my sister and my family, and like they were able to tell me about his life and the hardships that he went through. He went through so much, like from when he was a young boy, growing up his entire life. It was never easy. It was constant suffering, constant pain. Just to get out of that pain, he ran to the military, just to get more mentally, like, mental things. You go, like a lot of people who go into the military and the army, and he was in Desert Storm, and he saw horrible things, had to go through horrible things, came out of it, and was in so much despair still suffering in his mind, you know. And he passed away from like an overdose, and it was like an injury. But we run to those things when we can't deal with our pain, when we can't heal, when we don't know how to heal. Again, we cover it up. And like now that I see him in that light, instead of, you know, almost being a little angry that he's not here, a little angry with God that he's not here and I don't have him, like it helped me understand that like hurting people can hurt people, and he was doing the best that he could, and I should honor him regardless. I should be praying. I realized that I never pray for my father's soul. Like I never pray for him where he's at right now, because I know God. I don't know if he's sleeping in death or what happens right after, but I do know that we have a good God who's loving, and he's the God of justice. You know, and he hears our cries. I think about the begging widow, like the nagging widow or begging widow. I forget exactly what they say that she is, but it says that there was a unjust judge, and he was selfish to people. That's how the Bible describes this judge. But she went and pleaded to him every day, because widows in that time, when you were a widow and you had no one else in your family, you had no financial support, no protection, no care, no anything. So she was pleading with this judge, and it says that she annoyed him so much that he ended up giving in and like helping her. And Jesus ends up saying, like, you know, how much more the God of justice? Like he wants us to be desperate for him. He wants us to come and plead over and over again. And unlike the judge, he doesn't get annoyed, but he hears us, and he wants to come. He wants to come and calm our hearts and give us peace.
That is so, so beautiful. And I love that you came to that realization about your father. And I think that's going to free so many people, because I think a lot of us cover up our trauma with jokes and humor. And we hear that all the time, like on you know, videos. It's like, oh yeah, that's how I cope with things. And it's not really a good coping mechanism. And I'm so proud that you came to that realization. And it's the beginning of something so beautiful, I promise you. Like, obviously you deal with grief, because I feel like you covered it for so long, and now you're gonna start really, like, not that you never dealt with the grief, but I feel like covering it up with humor, try to lighten up the mood, which is a beautiful thing. Like, you obviously you're such a beautiful light, so that's like your go-to is to cover it up with more light. But it is something that we have to face. And like with me, like, you know, I ran from things, and maybe your coping mechanism was to cover it up and be like, oh, it's fine, like, no worries. And I think that is something that I'm just really glad that you're starting to really honor him and look at him in a way that you never have before. So I'm really proud of you.
Oh, thank you, Gabby.
Of course.
Yeah, it was definitely like a very eye-opening experience. And, I think we do that same thing with the pain that we're caused in relationships. Because I saw a meme and it was just like me crying over a boy, and my best friend is like laughing because she knows I'm going to be crying over another guy in like 3 days, or on to the next guy in like a day or two, have another guy that I'm like, and to me it was humor, and people are going to laugh, and they laugh because they relate. And I don't think we realize the root. When God is trying to tell you something, how there's a sign that God is trying to tell you something, and it's when you're going through the same cycle. When you're going through the same cycle, there's a sign that God is trying to speak something to your life. And when we don't deal with the pain of these relationships that fail, because that's never how God intended it to be. It was never supposed to be, let's date for a little bit, do everything that's done in a marriage, and then leave and have this gaping hole and move on to the next person to try to fill it. Like, that's never how it was. And if we don't stop to realize, like, hey, this is painful, like, and actually feel that pain and, like, break the chains and break the cycle, like, you're going to keep doing it. And we do cover things up rather than dealing with it. It's same thing with, like, the medicine. We go to the doctor because we have all this pain and we get prescribed the drug, but the drug helps relieve the symptoms, but it doesn't solve the problem. It doesn't heal the solution. It doesn't bring true healing to us.
Yeah, and this kind of goes back to what we were talking about earlier, is forgiving yourself. Like, forgiving yourself in the way that, maybe you wish you were more, like, you didn't take it. Wait, how do I say it? Like, forgiving yourself for not that you weren't honoring your father, but, like, the...
No,
like,
I wasn't.
Okay, I don't want to say that. It's like, well, like, forgiving yourself for, like, covering it up with humor and not really facing the problem, and not, like, looking at your father in a way that you wish you could have. And the same way with me, like, again, I'm being very vulnerable on this episode because I know I'm not the only one, and I know people, like, come on YouTube to hear people's testimonies. And so I was in a relationship where it was really, really toxic, and it wasn't until, like, months later that I realized that I was, like kind of, like, sexually abused. And I thought at the time, where I was like, oh, like, we were in a relationship and it's fine, and you cover it up with, like, humor, I was like, oh, it's fine. And then you realize, like, how dark that actually was, that time in your life. And I went to a therapist, like a Christian counselor, and she basically said, like, Gabby, I don't think that you need to change yourself. I think it's more like you need to forgive yourself. And I started crying because I never asked myself, or, like, thought of that I never thought about forgiving myself. I always thought about forgiving that person that did that to me because they were so lost. But I never thought about forgiving myself because I didn't realize that I really made myself feel like it was my fault that I put myself in that situation. And partly, like, I just didn't know what I didn't know, but at the same time, like, you're so blinded, and I did put myself in a situation because I was in a relationship with that person, but, like, it was such a confusing thing because you're so blinded. So once you're, like, give your life to Christ, you look back at the darkness that he shed light to, and you're like, whoa, like, that was really traumatic, and it really did imprint in my heart. So guys, forgive yourself, forgive things that you wish you could have changed and you wish you didn't allow. But I mean, if those things didn't happen, I wouldn't be able to talk about it and to be able to, like, pour life into others that have gone through the same things, and things that, like, that were just as confusing as that, because it's like, was it? And, like, when I was talking to my counselor, she was like, no, like, if you didn't have consent, if you were not conscious, that is not anything. And I, like, really opened my eyes. So guys, I really just pray that you guys forgive yourself and find grace within yourself.
I just had experience with forgiving yourself, so thank you for being so vulnerable, because I do think that it is going to free, like, a lot of people. And I think a lot of people don't realize the things that we don't need healing from. And I think I've dealt with that too. My realization recently was actually about purity. And I was sexually active, I guess, at a pretty young age, you know, so way younger than like it should have been, you know, it should be till now, like till I'm not married. So like one time is too many times. Anyways. Yeah, so I was just thinking, I was like, you know, I was never guarded, like, and protected. So like my sister was like telling me so much about that show Bridgerton. And
I started watching that the other day, and I was like, are you guys okay?
Yeah. Like, so it's funny because I see two sides. Okay, it's very steamy. So, like, definitely
it is very steamy.
Skip those things. That's not something that we should be watching at all. But, like, I like the root of what they believe in, like, their foundation. These girls have been protected. When it comes to giving them away, it's in a very honorable way, and it's full of integrity, and the people actually understand the name. Like, it's your name, it's your legacy. That's back then, like, the name, to be carried on the name was such an important thing. And the Bible talks about a good name is better than fine rubies and a fine perfume.
Yeah.
And, you know, like, they did things so different. I see, like, courtship is so different. Like, they didn't, even if you kissed a girl or, like, you were alone with it was like, marry her. You got to marry her. Like, what in the world?
I saw that.
Yeah. And so, like, purity was just such a thing. And I love how they would say, like, you can't have my honor. Like, I'm not going to give my honor away. And now I'm, like, so strong in that. Like, I think I talked about it last week. I've been praying for the fear of the Lord, praying for the fear of the Lord. And, like, it has been such a new thing, because that's something that I never prayed for. I heard about, I understood. I understand we have to have a reverent respect for God because he's God. But praying for the fear of the Lord is a gift from the Holy Spirit. And that is so different. And it really took root in me. And now I'm like, wow, I don't want to dishonor myself. Like, I deserve honor. I am honorable, and I could carry myself different. I could carry myself like I have value. And that's why, when I didn't heal from that, and I didn't know that I needed to heal from that, that's why I found myself in other relationships and doing the same thing, not breaking the cycle. Like, I didn't understand the reason to have purity, the reason to have a pure heart. And when you pray for that and you can have a pure heart, you start looking at that other person differently. Because like, for me, like, let's say it's like a old relationship, you know, a lot of the ways we look and a lot of the reasons we hold on to resentment is because we still look at that person with lust. We look at that person as if they're supposed to have been something for us, and we're supposed to have taken something from them, and they were supposed to do something for us. And, you know, so good. That's what dating is, but it's supposed to date till married. So when we date the wrong way, it leads to pain. Yeah. And then when let's say it breaks up, or you don't have that anymore, or you don't have that friendship anymore, or that whatever it may be, like, you're going to be clouded by that. And, like, we have to ask God to remove that from us. Like, I don't think I've ever asked God. It's so funny because there's always these new chapters, these new steps. Like, you know, I prayed about pride. I prayed about giving me joy, love, peace, self-control, like all of these things. But I don't think I've ever prayed, and it wasn't until I prayed for fear of the Lord that I prayed for God to help me with my lust. I was like, lust is a real thing. It's the lust of the eyes, lust of the flesh, and the pride of life. Pride breeds lust. And I'm like, God, I was walking in the woods, and that's why, side note, Jesus always went away, and he went to the woods, and he went to these isolated areas where it could just be him and God. Prayer was such a foundational thing. And, like, when we're out in those nature and we're out surrounded by God and not around man-made things, like, the Lord will speak to you. He'll speak to you, and he'll reveal things to you. So literally walking through the woods, I'm like, wow, God, pray about lust. Pray about removing the lust.
Purity. Okay, first of all, I love Bridgerton. Like, I love watching it, but when it gets a little crazy sometimes, I'm like, you guys need to chill.
Well, it is also supposed to be for this day and age.
Yeah, but no, I'm on season 3. And I love that I've noticed things like that where they, you know, if they kissed a girl or something, you automatically, that's like, oh my gosh, if they found out, then we would have to get married and stuff like that. And it's so pure.
My whole reputation is ruined. Exactly. I'm like,
oh. I also want to say that healing sometimes is instant. Like, somebody that can be healed from, like, alcoholism. Sometimes you can, like, God just heals you in the moment. But sometimes you have to go through the renewing of your mind, where you have to go through it, like, every single day, pick up that cross and things. Because there's been my life that I've been automatically freed from, like, I think modesty was like a big one for me, that it was so convicting, that it was so like in my face that I didn't want to do that anymore. Whereas other things in my life, other habits, it's been like a picking up my cross and, following him. It's like renewing your mind and making sure that you're obeying the will of God.
That's so cute, because I was reading in our textbook, and it was talking about this remote village in Africa that found Christianity. And so what they would do to keep in step with God, because they didn't have as many resources and they understood the importance of fellowship. So each of these young students in Christianity would go in like this field and cut like paths for them, and they would be their prayer paths. And so and each one would have their individual path. And so when other people saw that someone wasn't praying, it was because there was grass growing. So they would go and say, "Friend, there's grass in your path. You have grass growing in your path." And it shows that we're supposed to be desperate for God in that prayer. We're supposed to be going to prayer. We shouldn't have grass growing in our path, my friend. Like there's weeds growing in the place that you should be praying. Like make sure, like even if you have to set like goals for yourself in order to actually pray, like prayer brings heaven down. Prayer is what's going to bring healing. Prayer is what's going to bring the renewing of your mind. Prayer is what gives power to the Holy Spirit and gives power in our lives. And it has power over anything. Again, is anything too hard for God? No, like God can heal you from that heartbreak. He can heal you from that trauma. He can heal you from that pain. And not only will He heal you, He will give you a new mind moving forward for where you don't enter those same circumstances again. And if something does happen to you, you know what to do with it right away. You won't let it harden. You won't let it callous, because again, no one can make you be bitter. No one can make you be unforgiving. No one can make you be malice. Like you are the only one that can do that. And that's why you have to speak the truth. You have to choose which one you want to do. And you have to choose the truth over the lie, because the lie is going to lead you astray, and it's going to cause division, and it's going to break you at the end and separate you from God, which is the most and main thing that we need to keep in mind, because sin separates you from God. Unforgiveness is a sin, and it does separate you from Him.
That is so beautiful, with the little story of the...
Yeah.
I love that so much. And, sometimes things don't feel good, right? Sometimes things, healing isn't this beautiful, like, spa day and getting your hair done and your makeup and all. It's not that. Healing is going through the messiness and realizing, like, there's a lot of things that need to be fixed, and you can only do that with Jesus. And prayer is so important. I kind of want to do a podcast about prayer, because it is such it should be a tool that everybody has in their toolbox, because it is something that will just be so in tune with the Lord, right? And so, but I want to say that, sometimes things don't feel good. And in this world, you will have trouble. And just because it doesn't feel good doesn't mean that it's not biblical. So Romans 12:2, it says, "Do not conform to the patterns of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Then you will be able to test and approve what God's will is, His good, pleasing, and perfect will." And I want to talk about the neuroplasticity in the brain, and it's basically like changing your behavior and your thoughts. Like you can really make sure that you are changing the way you think, because you can do it, and that is called neuroplasticity, and that is literally biblical.
Let Him turn your mess into a message. And with your mess, we have the Messiah, and He is able to clean up your mess and again turn it into a message. So yeah, just remember that whatever you're going through, it is your testimony, and allow God to move you through it. Don't stay there. Don't stay stuck in the pain. I think we talked about it last week. If you're going through hell, don't stay there. That's a bad place to stop. So keep pushing forward, keep straining forward, and understand that no eye has seen, no ear has heard, no mind can even conceive of the good things God has in store for those that love Him. Keep your eyes fixed on God. Keep your eyes fixed on heavenly things. Pray for these things, and be sincere in your heart when you ask for God to bless you with these gifts.
Yes, and remember that you are not a victim, but a victor in Jesus Christ, and to always fix your eyes on Him.
And if you enjoy watching our podcast, please be sure to like and subscribe. Your support always means so much to us.
We're a viewer-supported podcast. If you want to donate, there's going to be a link in the description as well as a QR code that's going to pop on the screen. Any donation, anything that you guys want to give is truly, truly appreciated. And if you guys have anything that you guys want to talk about or need any advice, don't hesitate to reach out to us. We are always here with our hearts open and our arms open, ready to give any insights and love. And yeah, we're here for you guys.
Until next week.
Yes, bye-bye.
Bye.